Afix ano lang. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedyadramikam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. I will be right back. Can you pause? Do you need some water, dear? What verse are we on now?
Verse 5. That's what Mark said.
Will you help us out, please?
Sure. Nirmana moha chitta sanga dosha Adhyatmanitya vinivritta kama Dvandver vimukta Sukhatukha samye Gacchantya mudha Padamavyayam tat. Free from pride and delusion, victorious over the evil of attachment, dwelling constantly in the self, their desires having completely retired, freed from the pairs of opposites, such as pleasure and pain, the undiluted reach that goal eternal.
Now, we only just started a verse last week. Was it this one?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go through it again. Take it. These are the marks, one, of a person of steady wisdom. It's an echo of what we went through in the second chapter. But it also implies practice. So these traits are natural to a woman or man of steady wisdom. But you and I, we endeavor to form our minds in this way, to practice them. So first idea.
Free from pride and delusion.
Yes. So again, we talked last week about this idea of pride. We need to understand that pride is not only thinking I'm fabulous, I'm better, but it's opposite. I'm the worst person in the world. I have more problems than anybody else. I am more screwed up than anybody else. That is also pride. The hardest place for the ego to reside is in the truth about it, which is your ordinary. You are human. Assume everybody else's mind is more like yours than different. So all the particular issues that you find arising in your own karmic stream, I guarantee you, welcome to the human condition. You're not special. You're not better than anybody else, but you're also not worse. So, what is the opposite of pride?
Humility.
Humility. Listen carefully. Humility is being right-sized. Humility is having an honest viewpoint of your strengths and challenges. Did we talk about the sutra from chapter 2 of the Yoga Sutras last week? I don't think so. Anybody in Zoomland remember? Hello, are you out there?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think so, Jim.
You do think so or don't?
Do not.
Okay, so in the second chapter of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, tapas swadhyayeshwara pranidhana kriya yoga. It's the first sutra in the second chapter. Tapas, austerity. Swadhyaya. Here, the way Patanjali approaches it, we in the Vedanta community think of it our own personal study of scripture. Patanjali, it literally just means self-study, means a clear understanding of my own psychological issues. Ishvara pranidhana, trustful surrender to God. Austerity, self-analysis, trustful surrender to God is yoga in action. The difference between kriya and karma. Who can tell me the difference between kriya and karma? Karma is an already completed action. Kriya is an action in progress. Subtle difference. So, what are we to do? We start from the middle part. Swadhyaya. An inventory of my character traits, my character strengths, my character weaknesses, without judgment. And then in the beginning of our sadhana, we endeavor to practice thought replacement. If you have the habit of worrying about the future, people pleasing, being obsessed about what other people think of you, or you say or do something and then after the fact, oh, why did I do that? Why did I say that? Oh, I'm just so terrible. Anybody have those particular kind of mental habits? Yes? No?
Yeah.
This is stuff we want to begin to inventory. You can find words for it. But the idea here is we do the tapas. Tapas literally means heat. So we endeavor, when that first thought arises, let's say it's a thought where I'm beating myself up. So I see you for what you are. Turn your mind to, not that I'm the greatest person in the world. Turn your mind to the infinite. If that's too difficult, turn your mind to service. This is the way to become right-sized. Now, This is only efficacious and possible with God's help, which is why trustful surrender to God. I had a very dear friend, Catholic priest, been a priest 60 years. Every morning, he prayed to have God remove his self-pity, his anger, and his fear. Had to do it every day. Then his mind would be relatively free from it as he moved through his day. You don't do it just once. This is Ishvara Pranidhana, God's help. So, in the end, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. Very important point. So we practice being freed from pride. Pride is the idea that I'm somehow terminally unique. I'm just a little bit better, a little bit smarter than everybody else. Or I'm screwed up worse than everybody else. You're a human being at the level of your equipment. Assume we are all more alike than we are. And once you begin to have this kind of honesty about your own ways in which we are selfish, ways in which we are controlling, ways in which we are intolerant of others, ways in which we are dishonest, and also ways in which we are genuinely compassionate, genuinely generous, genuinely a good friend. And it's not all in red ink. This begins to break down the sense of separateness from our fellow human beings. When you understand your own mind, you understand everybody else's. This is a very important teaching on how to be free from pride separates us. Any thoughts on this before we go on? Oh, it was pride. What was the next idea?
Delusion.
Yes. So this delusion of terminal uniqueness, of course, the deepest level, this delusion that I'm a person. Forgetting aham brahmasmi, I am that partless Brahman. Next idea.
Oh, Jim.
Yes.
So this, as you describe it, I've heard it before. This
Who's this who's talking? I can't.
This is Soumya.
Hi,
So-
Soumya.
Hi, Jim. So I like what you're saying very much. It's very practical and yeah, it sounds very simple. And are we saying that this is, by doing this, we're bringing a sense of oneness with ourselves and others?
It helps us find this connection, this freedom from terminal uniqueness, this freedom from what's the word I want to use?
Mhm.
Toxic self-obsession.
Mhm.
It's paradoxical.
Yes. Yes.
Now, in the end, when you see what your mind is, Swamiji used to say the mind is a sewer.
Mhm.
And it's very funny because what's in the sewer? Poop.
Yes.
Your mind is full of,
Poop.
but what's the context of it? It's clear running water.
Mhm. Mhm.
So also, all these thoughts arise, virtuous thoughts and vicious thoughts.
Mhm. Mhm.
So in the end, it's not about trying to be a goody-goody.
Right.
That's not it. In the end, we want to be able to get out of the mind. But it depends on what level we are for our practice. If we're very clearly identified with the ego, and we have a lot of psychological toxicity, then these exercises, this one beautiful sutra of Patanjali's, is a wonderful tool to begin to heal with that.
Mhm.
We don't always have the capacity to have any kind of dominion over the first thought that arises. But we have some sense of dominion about the thoughts that follow.
Mm.
And that's where we can practice this tapas, swadhyayeshwara pranidhana kriya yoga. Very powerful stuff. Is that useful, Soumya?
Yes, it is, Jim. It is. Thank you.
Not mine. It's all right there in the scripture.
Yes.
All right, next idea.
Victorious over the evil of attachment.
Yes. So the problem here is not the enjoyment of the world. Many people get a false idea. I'm not supposed to enjoy the world. I'm supposed to shun it all like poison, etc., etc., etc. No. The world is not something we want to be afraid of. Listen very carefully. In the end, even desire is not an impediment to self-realization. It's attachment. It's the sense of insistence, the sangraha. I must have it this way. I cannot have it that way. We can all tell the difference between a preference and an insistence. Now, when it comes to this idea of our capacity to enjoy without attachment, I'd like to use the example of going out to see a sunset. You go out to the ocean, the Marin headlands, out to Ocean Beach to watch the sun go down. Who's done that? And we have beautiful sunsets here in the Bay Area. Gorgeous sunsets. But do you become attached to a sunset? Do you mourn the fact that the sun has slipped below the horizon? Do you wish you could take the sunset home and hang it on your wall? Do you? No. Swami Tapovanam did the same exercise with Swamiji. I said they were up in the Himalayas. He says, do you see that mountain? If you're in Uttarkashi or Rishikesh, you can look up and you can see these Himalayas that are 25, 30,000 feet. They're incredible. And Tapovanam said, isn't that a beautiful mountain? Swamiji says, yeah. Tapovanam says, no one can possess mountain. So we have the capacity to enjoy, to acknowledge beauty. And it's not problematic as long as we do it without attachment. Now, here's the secret. The culprit is what we call chintya. Chintya in Hindi means worry. In Sanskrit, it's got a more nuanced meaning. It means after the fact rumination over an experience, positive or negative, that then sets in motion the desire to repeat it or the desire to avoid it. So I like to tell the example, I'm over at some friend's house for dinner. After dinner, they serve ice cream. Chocolate. Oh my God, is this good? What kind of ice cream is it? Oh, this is Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey. It's really good. So I give my thanks to my hosts. I come home. I'm thinking, God, that was good ice cream. Then the next day, finish class, do the dishes, and I'm going, Whole Foods is still open. What was that? Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey. Oh, wonder if I can run down there and get some.
Mhm.
It's that simple. And the negative side of it is true too. You have some experience of, ugh, never gonna do that again. How could they have served that dish? Ugh. So what we are invited to do, be in the present, experience what's directly in front of us, understand what the mind's going to do. If the situation is conducive, the mind will be happy. If the situation is non-conducive, the mind will be unhappy. Don't get involved with it. And then when that moment passes, bring our minds to the next moment. Children are very good at this. If you've ever had children, or maybe some nieces and nephews, they'll be completely engrossed in playing with toys. Let's wait for these motorcycles go by. And then they get distracted. And then what happens to the toys? Abandoned. This is why, for example, most of us have no memory going back more than 3 or 4 years of age. Doesn't mean we didn't have experiences. But children at that age have no chintya. So it does not leave an impression. Unless it's terribly traumatic or something like that. So this is why the teaching invites us to be in the now, the infinite, perpetual. Don't be afraid of the world. Vairagya. Shankara defines it as that desire, we don't achieve it overnight, to give up attachment. All experiences gained through the senses and attachment to any personal sense of self. For the person of steady wisdom, desire arises, it's fulfilled or not fulfilled, they just drop it. You and I practice. Any thoughts on this whole teaching around being free from attachment? Don't be afraid of the world. The world is fundamentally neutral. It's my mind that projects joy-giving or misery-producing qualities on it. And I've got to be able to let go of the quality of insistence. Next idea.
Dwelling constantly in the self.
Yes. Now, here it's of value to review what I call the ruthless rule of the mind. Ruthless, it takes no prisoners. The ruthless rule of the mind is the mind will return to the experience that's given it the greatest joy. You may think out of some religious conviction or spiritual idea, I want moksha, I want God. But of what really floats your boat is approval and attention, good sex, money, food, being in control. What I like to do is we take the word God, G-O-D. And what we do is we just go pull apart, have an extra O. And now we have G-O-O-D. My good is my God. Now, thank God, God, the self, is the most beloved, or we'd all be in deep trouble. So right now, for many of us, it takes attention, intention, to be able to let go of the world and drown the mind in Brahman. to revel in the sound. But keep at it. In time, perhaps here in class, or if you meet a great Mahatma, or in your own meditation, mind will stop, and all the Vikshepa Shakti will cease. Mind will come home, even if it's just for a moment. And you'll get the Brahmananda Rasa, the juice of the bliss. And in a sense, the jig's up. Because then no matter what kind of habits, extroversion, vasanas you have, you're going to remember that. There's a piece of you that's always going to want to get back there. Is that a mind state? Yes. The beauty of it is it's a desire for something that's real in yourself. Not something that's illusory and temporary in this world. What is the dharma of the human mind? The human mind is a pleasure seeker, pain avoider mechanism. From the moment you get out of bed in the morning until your head hits the pillow at night, the only thing you're engaged in, only thing, seeking the good by your highest understanding of the good and avoiding misery. That's all we ever do. No, I'm selfless. I serve others. Why do you serve others? Because it's the right thing to do, because it's your idea of the good. Makes me feel good to help other people. I hear people who working with a psychotherapist, oh, I'm learning to love myself. And they think it means take a bubble bath and get a massage. Oh, if only we would all learn to love ourselves. Thus, we give you something real. So, once the yogi begins to learn this trick of Atmaramana, this reveling in the sound, I now have my teaching aid. This is Hanuman embracing Lord Ram. Can you all see it there in Zoom land?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, beautiful.
Hanuman is the mind. It's so powerful. It can go here and there, a flying monkey mind. Powerful, it can carry mountains. But where does Hanuman find satisfaction? In the embrace of Rama. Rama is yourself. That's where the mind finds peace. Some of us may have been lucky enough to be in the presence of a Mahatma and be tuned to that person. It's what Swamiji used to call a borrowed glory. I used to hang with Swamiji. It's like It wasn't about his body. It wasn't even about his words anymore. It's just a million miles away. Blah, 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 PMI, PFTOED. It's just pouring my mind to that emptiness. Infinite peace. Shankara says, being a full knower of the Supreme, who has retired into the Supreme. All different ways in language to try to point, indicate. It's drowning of the mind in the sound. This, in the end, is what pulls the mind out of its obsession with form. Next idea.
Their desires having completely retired.
So this used to confuse me because I, for example, would be at a camp with Swamiji, and sometimes he would be at the table, the head table. We'd all be at, in other tables, and it was clear he had preferences. He loved spicy South Indian food. He loved chocolate. He loved driving in fast cars. He loved the Himalayas. He loved it when a student could tune up. It was so clear. Well, he's not supposed to have preferences or desires. He's supposed to be beyond all desires. No. Again, there's a difference between a preference and an insistence. This is why I do not like to translate the word kama as desire. That's what it means. I prefer to translate it as craving. So you get the quality of insistence that's wrong with that. Preferences are not problematic. It's if you don't get what you want, can you let it go? Any questions about this? Next idea.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
That insistence or that sangraha, in a way, is also responsible for us showing up to this class, for example. Like that insistence that this is what I want for myself. Is spiritual growth, or at least spiritual anchoring, or having a light that I can turn to. So that's one thought around that. But the other thought is also that there are states where I experience almost apathy, where, for example, if tomorrow New York were to not happen, I won't be devastated. But it's also making life more insipid. When I go through a spell of I don't have anything strong that I'm holding on to strongly. What would you say to that?
Well, let's take the first one first. We have what we call subhaj, auspicious desire. The scriptures talk about being a mumukshu, a jinyasu, What's a mumukshu?
Someone with a burning desire of liberation.
What's a jinyasu?
Seeking knowledge.
Yes, the highest knowledge. This is a desire that in the end removes all the other desires, because it's a desire for something that's real, not something that's illusory.
Not something that is?
It's a desire for something that's real, not something that's an illusion.
Not an illusion.
Yes. Now, once you are a jnani, which is different than a jinyasu, once you are jivan mukta, which is different than a mumukshu, the desire for liberation goes away. Now, there is a difference between the apathy of tamas and the non-attachment of sattva. The apathy of tamas, the 21st century, we would call it depression. You may have experienced this or may have friends who have experienced this. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to take a shower. I don't want to clean the house. I don't really even want to go to work. I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to eat potato chips and watch Netflix. Anybody familiar with that state? That's not sattva. That's tamas. That's the apathy of tamas. There may be no attachment for the world, but there's certainly no abidance in itself. And in fact, usually you're pretty unhappy in that state. Is this making sense? Now, the inactivity of tamas is different than the non-activity of sattva. Many of us think that I have to be motivated by fear, by my needs, by my cravings, by false senses of responsibility. For many of us, it's the only way we've ever acted through our whole lives. I had a student, and I can't remember who it was, but they were studying taiko drumming, you know, the Japanese drumming tradition. And their taiko master said, you keep practicing taiko drumming until you can drum like a child. The image that comes to my mind, I can remember when I was 4 or 5, and I pulled out all the pans from my mother's cupboard, and I took wooden spoons. You ever see kids do that? Did you ever do that as a kid? Did you ever like to go out and ride your bike? Yeah. So there's a kind of desire, a kind of work in the world that is expressive of our nature, that is filled with creativity, filled with joy, which is different than the motivation out of kartavya, Who remembers what kartavya means?
Obligatory action.
Yes, obligatory actions. I must do this. I've got to have it, either because of the waggy finger of the superego. This is what parents tell me to do. This is what husband or wife tells me to do. This is what my job tells me to do. This is what the society tells me to do. All that's gone for the person of steady wisdom. But we do continue to have prarabdha karma, karma of this life. Remember, the dharma of the body is karma. You will act. You will act according to your nature. Every person is impelled into activity helplessly by the force of prakriti.
Jim, something happened and we can't hear you.
Yeah, Jim got muted somehow. Can you unmute Jim?
Did that work?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I wonder how that happened. I didn't touch it.
The
Okay.
iPad is tamasic right now.
Huh?
It's the iPad's tamas.
Oh, Tamasic iPad. Okay, so Arjun is there in the middle of the two armies. And what does he do? Because he's self-obsessed and self-absorbed, I can't do this. And he says, I'm going to go off to the forest and meditate. Tamas. Now, what Krishna knows about it, he knows what Swadharma is. And he says, don't be Clivium, don't be a wuss. Get up and fight. You know what's going to happen if you don't fight? Everybody's going to know you're a wimp and a coward. That's even worse. Just poked at him, poked all his ego buttons. Because it's his nature to be a warrior. So, Shweta, are you there?
Yes.
Have you ever had the feeling where you see injustice there at the school and you can't help yourself? You just open your mouth one more time to fight for justice?
That's my default state.
Just what dharma? Why fight it? The way the Lord made you.
I feel that people constantly mistake tamas for sattva.
It is a common mistake. It is a common mistake. Now, it may be your swadharma to leave the world, go off to an ashram or the Himalayas, to take up the path of the ascetic, the sannyasi. But avoiding life is phony renunciation. Now, don't worry. The necessities of life will impel you into activity. I jokingly tell people, my God has led me through life through my wallet. Why? I do not live in India. I am not in a culture where I can just head north to the Himalayas. My visa ran out. I'm a dude living in the United States. And at some point, I've got to pay the rent. Which impels me into activity. No playing. Now I'm retired. Now I can do 5 classes a week. Don't have to worry about it. But it wasn't always so. So you get to decide. Eventually, if you are not where you're supposed to be, the pain will become intolerable. I can't tell you how many people I know who sit there on the couch, tell me, feels like I'm done with this particular job, this particular career, but I'm afraid to move on. And then weeks later, months later, they get fired, or they get laid off, or the company goes broke. God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. Rivoli, there it was. Did you think about getting out of the restaurant business before COVID?
Sure.
You had the sense, okay, I'm done with this?
Yeah.
And then what? Fear,
Money.
money, all that sort of stuff. So what did the Lord do?
Said, you're done.
Yeah. Yeah. It died. When I was teaching at Cal State Hayward, wasn't there that long? My whole teaching career, I get my master's degree, I worked for 7 years. Then the whole Enron crisis happens. We had a 75% layoff in the lecturer pool. And of course, the most recent hires were the first to go, the union. I was out on my ear. All right. I'm not supposed to be an educator in academia. It's not where the Lord wants me. Emergency something?
No, this is just an alarm.
Okay. Do you need to handle something? You're more than welcome.
No, my apologies. This was supposed to be for the morning. It's in the PM instead.
Okay. So, only you can figure this out, whether it is inactivity or non-activity. But don't worry about it. Now, if you're renouncing the world, and in fact what you're doing is suppressing, it will show up as sadness, apathy, depression. Those are the signs. If you're suppressing, you will be depressed. It is pressed down. That's a tamasic state. Hang with it. It might just be grieving the loss of things. But if it persists, when we talked about the 3 gunas, what is the antidote to a tamasic mind?
To act.
Stimulate the mind with rajas. That's what we do. And then from the rajasic mind, we move into sattva. Did that answer your question? It's an excellent question.
But if renunciation leads to a sense of freedom and lightness,
Then that's good. If it's real renunciation, it will lead to a sense of freedom and lightness. But if you're sitting home stuck, that's not renunciation. Only you can determine this inside.
right.
But don't worry, your prarabdha will put you where you're supposed to be. Are you supposed to be in New York? It'll happen or it won't.
See, that's again a sense of contradiction, right? Like, if your prarabdha's going to put you there anyway, why act? Then just surrender, right?
But then you stay here. And if it's uncomfortable and you don't like it, you'll want to do something. Doesn't matter what you do. You do not get freedom by the cessation of action.
Jim-
Let me finish the idea, just a minute, Shweta. Your own choices, your desires, your movement through life is not separate from God's will or your karma. It is not armchair grace. It's like the person, Jim, your kitchen's a mess. The dishes are done and there's food out on the stove. God will take care of it. That's not grace, that's stupidity. Do you see what I mean? Grace is, I have the inspiration to go clean the kitchen. God doesn't do dishes. God doesn't wash windows. We do that. God's grace. So, do you feel like moving to New York?
Yes.
So put the footwork in. And it'll either happen or it won't. If doors slam in your face and it seems like an impossibility, when it's supposed to be. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
And be unattached to the result. That's what this part of the chapter is saying. Anna, your pop-up restaurants. Remember when that was like just the thing that you were on fire with?
Yeah.
And I remember when you did it, it was very successful that one time. What happened to it?
Pandemic happened.
What?
The pandemic started, so I couldn't do another one.
Yeah.
And then I moved on to another project.
But did you like mourn and grieve? Oh no, my life is over because I can't do pop-up.
Yeah, I was actually quite happy that I hadn't yet started planning another pop-up and lose a deposit and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So you had the desire, you were willing to act, but life changed everything.
Right.
COVID.
Yeah.
So are you getting the sense of what I'm saying? Doesn't mean we don't make plans. Of course we do. Doesn't mean we don't have ambitions, projects. But the slogan we all hear, man proposes, God disposes. I come from a military family. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy. Very famous saying in the military world. Is this helpful?
Yes.
And don't worry about it. Have fun. Move to New York like a child beating on the back of pots and pans. Give up the idea that this is going to solve all your problems. It won't. It'll just be different. And you might enjoy it. So enjoy the process. But you will know. All right, next idea.
I have a question.
Please.
With regards to the earlier part that you're talking about of your drug trip and how you can't fight your nature. But, you know, for someone who might have anxiety as a part of the way that they think, or avoidance or something like that, at least in American culture right now, we talk about that as part of their nature. They have
That's
an
not
anxious
true.
nature.
That's not
Okay,
true.
so I wanted to kind of address that and understand that better.
The idea of Prakriti, Swadharma, is about an action.
Okay.
Let me give you a clear example. So I heard a couple weeks ago about a young girl, young woman, who was attracted to other women. And she goes to a spiritual teacher and says, I don't know what to do with these feelings. And this spiritual teacher says, oh, that's adharmic. Your choices are go marry a man and learn to be a wife and have children. Or you can become a sannyasi. Those are your choices. Now, those of us who may ourselves or have friends in the LGBTQ community, well, that's really bad advice. Because you cannot change your nature. Sexual orientation is not something you choose. It's not like depression that you can get over. Now, that doesn't mean when you come out of the closet, you don't have problems. The society is judgmental. But it's a different kind of problem than living an inauthentic life. Did that make sense to you? Yes, no?
Yes, that did make sense, but still, like, from the standpoint of, like, so if someone is like has like a constant level of anxiety, for example, right? What someone might even call like clinical anxiety disorder, is that a symptom? Is that their prakriti? Is that
I don't know. I'd have to talk with them.
okay?
Are they anxious because they've got a deeply rooted, maladjusted view of life? Or do they have messed up brain chemistry? I don't know. If they have messed up brain chemistry, take an anti-anxiety pill. But chances are yoga could be very helpful.
So what I'm hearing is the distinction is that which is something we can work on versus that which we cannot.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all.
Yeah. So if someone were to tell you it would be so much better if you owned 20 buildings and became a real estate mogul, what would be your response?
Why?
You'd probably make a lot of money,
Sure.
but your heart's not in it.
Right. If I wanted to do that, I would have done it.
Yeah. And you tested it as a start, didn't you?
Yeah.
No, not for me.
Well,
So we can do that. We can try things out. Ideally, as parents, this is what we're supposed to do with our children. You can do and be anything you want. There's no limits. I want to be a fireman. Okay. This is how we find our Swadharma. What's sad is when I meet somebody who's 50 or 60 years old, and I'll ask my standard question: if you were independently wealthy and had all the education and talent and connections in the world, what would you be doing with your life? And I'll get an answer, I don't know. I said, when was the last time you really did something you enjoyed and didn't act from a sense of false duty Well, when I was 5, I used to like to finger paint. That's so sad. That's the last time they acted from the sense of expression, of creativity, of the joy of this world.
But Jim, sometimes it seems like there can be a state of living where it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're joyful.
And that's beyond that. I mean, remember we did karma yoga for
Right.
chapters.
Mhm.
We're moving through a progression.
Got it.
But I just finished going through Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism by the Tibetan Lama Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche with a student. Wonderful book. It's held up well. It was written in the early 70s. Trungpa was a Tibetan tulku, meaning they grabbed him when he was like 4 years old and drug him back to the monastery and raised him to be this big mucky muck lama. And then the Chinese come, they invade Tibet, and many of the senior monks are killed by the Chinese army. Trungpa escaped over the Himalayas from Tibet, with I think something like 50 Tibetans in the middle of winter. Made it into India. And he goes on to Oxford, he studies English, actually got a degree in English literature. Gave up his robes, went around in a business suit. But it was his swadharma to be a dharma holder. He could not teach the dharma, couldn't stop himself. So Nyingma Institute and Shambhala and writing books and all this stuff, and it just happened because that's what he came to do. Couldn't help himself. Okay, did we get all that? Is there more in this verse? This is a really important one.
There's one more.
Okay,
Freed from the pairs of opposites such as pleasure and pain.
yes. So the dwandwas, it's a reduplicated root. Dwi means two. Heat and cold, the opposites of the physical. Sukham dukham cha. Swamiji usually translated as pain and pleasure. I prefer suffering and pleasure because it has to do with the mind. I tend to think of pain as something physical. And then honor and dishonor. Siddha, asiddha. That's in the intellect. So when the situation is conducive, the mind is happy. When the situation is non-conducive, the mind is unhappy. The world will deliver its allotted dose of conducive and non-conducive environments. Don't worry about it. Don't get caught up in ego's strategy of trying to maximize all the pleasurable stuff. Play whack-a-mole with the painful stuff. Practice the sama drishta, this equality of vision. We'll end with a little paraphrase from Yoga Vasishta. Why try to cover the world in leather when you can wear shoes? Ego wants to cover the world in leather. The yogi just puts on her shoes. Spirit of non-attachment. Asangoham, 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 punapna, sachidananda rupaham, aham evaham, unattached, unattached, unattached am I again. I am of the nature of pure existence, consciousness, bliss absolute. I am that Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om.